Welcome to the last day of the Congress Uncertain Landscapes. And today we are going to have keynote presentations the whole day. And we will start with Felipe Criado-Boado. But first, because we are going to have a table of discussion, maybe to contextualize who am I, and because I'm going to also guide the conversation. I come from the Center of Art History and Artistic Research, Shaya, University of Évora, and we are one of the members of Into Past, the organizer of this Congress. And my background is as an architect, but I've done research in history of art and urban culture and heritage also, landscape urban heritage. But now we will start presenting Felipe Criado, that has close to 4 decades of research. So he is a full research professor at the Spanish National Research Council in Galicia, and he's director of the Institute of Heritage Sciences called INCIPIT from 2010. Through his main research interest, which is the study of space, he developed a personal scientific journey coming from his background in history at University of Santiago de Compostela to embark in a PhD in prehistory in archaeology, which gave him the opportunity to study at the University of Cambridge. He describes himself as an explorer of 3 complementary avenues in his involvement with the social realm of knowledge, which are thinking archaeology, engineering research groups, and conducting fieldworks and managing science. And regarding the first avenue, which is thinking archaeology, his intellectual passion for fundamental research brought him to study megalithism, the origins of monumental architecture, and landscape archaeology for 10 years. Another decade to develop a theoretical framework of cultural landscape models and a theory of archaeology visibility, starting a new interest for cultural heritage and its value chain. A third decade, he delved into archaeology of space with the development of a method to produce archaeological meaning, started in this period with his engagement with community archaeology and modes of scientific practice. Lately, in the 4th decade of research, he proposed the concept of X-scape to explain the formal regularities of the different dimensions of past human landscapes, and he turns towards cognitive science. Therefore, the journey brought him to a holistic and critical approach to cultural heritage and heritization processes. And regarding fieldwork, he has worked and done field-based projects in countries like Spain, Galicia, Portugal, United Kingdom, Chile, Argentina, Uruguay, and also Scandinavia. And regarding managing sciences, he directed the human and social science sections at the SIC from 2009 and 2012. And also he created the Institute in INCIPIT, dedicated to fundamental research of cultural heritage in 2010. And he also, until 21, from 2015 to 21, he was a president of the European Association of Archaeologists. And now at this moment, arriving at this moment, he got and he's coordinating an European Research Council project called X-scape, Material Minds Exploring the Interactions Between Predicative Brains, Cultural Artifacts, and Embodied Visual Research. So the project studies how materialization of human practices relate to cognition and to social cultural context, combining evidence of the relationship with material culture and perceptual reactions to understand how buildings, artifacts, and landscapes change our fundamental patterns of thought and attention, and also to understand the emergence of our modern minds. And so I think the stage is for Felipe now. So we are very eager to listen to your presentation. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Anna, for so detailed presentation and pretty exhaustive, I must say. By hearing you, it came immediately to my mind the amount of people that actually is engaged in all the different steps or works and things that you were presenting here. And by the way, one of these persons is Rebecca Blanco, that now is one of the, together with Marta, of the organizers of this meeting. So I want to start by telling you thank you so much for bringing me here, and also for putting together the conference, because the conference, Uncertain Landscape, looks like an extraordinary call for trying to make us thinking out of our boxes. And this is exactly what I am going to do. So far as I get to open my own computer. Yeah, it's here. So, and thank you everybody for being here too. This could be the title for my presentation. Okay, the title is, first of all, is suggesting things, is suggesting ideas, but let me control the time. Okay. Is suggesting different ideas and things, but also is coming with an important concept that I will, in one sense or the other, will be rounding or flying around over the presentation today. Well, certainly I am going to speak about uncertain landscapes, because so far as we understand usually as landscape the picture of Montes that is on the back, I am going to speak also a matter about the landscape, understanding these other material pieces in the picture as landscapes. So that would be the first main thesis of my talk today, that the landscape is so big and so important that actually goes further on of what usually we understand as landscape. The second thesis is that landscapes are organized. Well, this is not a thesis already, it's already something that is very known. What is my thesis here is that because it's organized, landscapes are one way or the other the result of design process. They keep pattern. The pattern creates regularity. The regularity is telling us that there is some sort of structure behind the landscapes. And this structure, and this is one of the things that today I will insist, are much more connected with what we call inner models. And finally, inner models become socialized in form of S-scape. By saying that, I would suggest too that doing landscape studies, we can perform a sort of inverse or reverse engineering of landscape that allows us to go from landscape to this escape and to reconstruct what these escapes are. By the way, for part of my presentation, I will need to use something that I will put immediately on the table. Give me 1 minute. This is becoming quite worrying because I am realizing that more and more my presentations are becoming almost performance. But this is just because we need to use different ways to produce meaning, and whatever whatever allows us to produce meaning must be used in our presentations. But be careful. I'm not going to do... Oh, yeah. I need to use a couple of X for my presentation later on. Actually, this could be the funny title of the presentation too. What an egg can tell us about these matters, about mind, about cognition, about landscape, and so on. Well, my presentation was mainly based in the Synergy Grant ERC project that I am coordinating now, doing with 4 other PIs. Luis Martinez is one of those, he is a Spanish neuroscientist specialized on visual cognition. The other 2 PIs of this European project are Johannes Müller, a pretty well-known archaeologist, and Andy Clark, what is one of the most actually famous cognitive philosophers nowadays. The 4 together are leading a group of people that is distributed in 4 different locations. However, the main experimental infrastructure, the main experimental facility to develop the project is based in our headquarters in Incipit, in Santiago, in the headquarters of the Institute of Heritage Science of Spanish CSIC. The research problem of the project is exactly this. Do the works we build alter our mind, affect, influence our mind? This idea has been around for a long while already. A number of philosophers have dealt with this topic in the last 200 years. And before that, in fact, a lot of system of thought, I would say even a lot of religions have been dealing with the fact that the world is affecting us so much that we cannot be a part of the world. So one way or the other, the idea of worlds altering our mind is something that has been with us for a long while. Look at this example I brought, for instance. It's a sculpture made in Belfast to celebrate the reconciliation after the struggles, after what actually was almost a civil war. And the interesting thing is that if you come to the inscriptions, to the narrative that is just beside the sculpture, the saying of the aim of this sculpture is to bring people together and to change hearts and minds, to make bridge across the divides in our community. So once again, this is just an example of how, through a piece of material culture, it's expected that we can affect, we can change what people think and what people feel, to change hearts and minds in a good sense. So this idea has been here for a long while. The objective of the project is actually to approach exactly that problem, but from a quite strict, rigorous scientific methodology, something that could be not only experimental and experience, but something that could be also replicated and accepted by other people without even in spite if they agree or not with the main premise of the project. So the real matter is to change the cognitive, to test the hypothesis of cognitive change caused by materiality. For doing that, the project is performing several, well, actually a lot of different case studies in different locations in the world. Honestly speaking, the most of the cases will be from European recent archaeology, the last 5 millennia BC. But still, We are going to perform some cases with archaeology in other contexts, in other continents. Also, we will perform case studies with ethnographic or anthropological, in anthropological context. And at some point also we will come to deal with case studies that have to do with history, ancient history, modern history, present-day sociology. The way how we will do that is by using a number of different cognitive techniques to record the effect of materiality into the mind, in the cognitive process. These techniques, the most basic one and the most important to start, is being eye tracking. But we will complete eye tracking with the measurement of some other variables, including electroencephalography and many other things. More and more, in the moment, we are realizing that besides eye tracking, gesture tracking, movement tracking, whatever you want to call it, will be also very informative too. We are almost starting to think that perhaps some of the bits we wanted to study with eye tracking perhaps will be much better and even easily performed from the study of gesture tracking. This is a study that Luis Martinez and some other colleagues did of a magician playing a trick and doing gesture tracking of his movements. Okay, let's go ahead because otherwise, for all that, the X-Escape is the project. The X-Escape is a 6 years project. We are now starting our 2nd year, so we still have 5 years ahead. The X-Escape, or Material Minds short title, is the project to perform this research. But the actual infrastructure to perform this research is what we call now the Material Minds Lab. The Material Minds Lab is a research facility settled in incipit headquarters in Santiago, where we have the techniques, the technicians, the people, the researchers to do this sort of analysis. The Material Minds Lab was created with the idea of surviving after the project, of creating a research infrastructure that could keep living after the project ends. And for that, in a short while, I don't know if that will take 1 year or even 2 years, but as Massimo, I think that in 2 years, we will open the Material Minds Lab to collaboration with other projects, with other researchers, and so on. Actually, we are starting already, but into the project to collaborate with quite a lot of people outside the project. But in a time from now, the Material Minds Lab will be a research facility that will be playing service to the research community. So the idea is that anyone with a good research question and a good reason to perform the sort of experiments that we can do in the Material Minds Lab could come to us, and we could establish ways to cooperate. All the previous is just the background, the infrastructure, actually, to come to the real matter. And the real matter is to distinguish how materiality is affecting cognition. I can already anticipate that it's not only one way, a road of one way, but it's a two-way road, because then cognition is also affecting materiality. The reason for that is that humans are constructing all the time inference to try to understand the world and to try to orientate our action in the world. Also, and I will introduce now that point that will be important in the rest of the talk, also we are doing inference to try to predict, to try to anticipate the world itself, and for then adjusting much better our behavior with the expected effects that we can expect from the world. But these inferences are based definitely in our context, in our surrounding. They are based in the world. And the world is overall. We, archaeologists, anthropologists, architects, historians, and historians of art know perfectly that the world is a material world that has been created by us. What means that then what we created is basing inference with which we face the world, and this inference also are finally producing not only facilitating our cognitive processing, but also creating our cognitive pattern. Now, to look at this, it's time to come back to the egg. Well, I know that because we are in a World Heritage Site, our behavior should be as in accordance to the feature of being here, or to the matter of being here. So I will do this not in the best way to try to connect, to tell you my meanings, but, well, you know what is this, okay. Yeah. Marta is worried. Yeah, you can be worried, because what happens is I do that. You can see, no? Okay, now is the difficult moment, Marta. What's happening if I do that? Well, actually, I was prepared to nothing happens, because, look at this. This egg is hard-boiled, so it's not going to split itself, in creating a mess. But anyhow, if I bring here the egg and throw it you will expect immediately that the egg is going to create a mess. Overall, because first of all, I have done with a fresh egg. So you are expecting that I am taking the same egg, and what is happening in your minds? That actually, before I do something, you are already waiting that something could happen. And because you know what an egg is, you can be prepared, you are anticipating already in your mind what is going to happen. Finally comes the surprise, because the egg that I will throw you, well, I am not going to throw, is hard-boiled, what means that it's not going to produce the effect of the other egg. Even more, actually, if I would have taken this egg first and did exactly what I did before, and then I take the first one I throw you, perhaps in that case you won't be so much in alarm, because you would expect that the second egg would be as the first egg. Well, all this is just to tell you a very basic idea, that is that we can understand the world in an efficient way because we have already concepts, inner models about the world. Without them, we will be lost. But we can do in an efficient way because we have these models already in our mind. Our mind is a set, is a container of inner models to face the world. And we can do, by the way, we can do in an efficient way because actually we are not only understanding the world because of the inner models, we are anticipating the world. We are predicting in a very short term, we are predicting what could happen. This is the idea that actually Andy Clark has developed in his last book that came out 6 months ago, and the book is called The Predictive Machine. And he insists, and a lot of cognitive scientists insist today, that the brain is first of all a predictive machine, a machine to make predictions, because doing predictions is the only way that we can perform an accurate or precise, a good behavior. Of course, prediction here doesn't mean to predict what is going to happen 2 years ahead, or what is going to happen next month, or even next week, or next hour. We are talking about predictions that happens in a matter of seconds, or even milliseconds, fractions of a second. But already, as I did some years ago in Braga, if I throw you a ball, and you don't know that I am going to throw a ball to you, you will be surprised and cannot do something. But if you know that I am going to throw the ball because I have it on my hand, you can be ready to take the ball. Sorry, let me take the water. Well, so this is the core idea about cognition. Requires continuously inner process to feed the cognitive processing, inner model to feed the cognitive processing. Having said that, with the sample of let me then come to a much detailed model of how cognition works. Today, there are many that already start to present that cognition, the model of cognition could be better modelized as 4E plus 1A. It's funny because this happens all the time in research. Some years ago, it was just 1E, then came someone and put the second A, then came the next one and put the third and the fourth, and so on. Well, today we accept, generally speaking, and this is what is called the 4A plus 1A model. We said that cognition is embodied, cognition is inactive, cognition is embedded, cognition is extended, and cognition is connected to affects, to the emotional side, to the sentiments and the sensations. The matter about affects is exactly what I have done with the egg. I was playing with the egg to create a surprise that is a sentimental, sentimental, emotional response from you. And that remembers us that emotions are also important for the cognitive process too, because emotions is what prepare us to what could happen and to react to what happens if it has happened something that was totally unexpected. As I said, the role, the position of the affects, of the feelings or emotions in the cognitive process is actually to demonstrate the accuracy between the cognitive prediction and the world itself. When the cognitive prediction adjusts to the actions in the outside world, we do well. But when there is no such a correspondence between the prediction and what finally happens, a surprise, an emotional response comes that allow us to change, to switch on a different inner model. This is the reason. Well, I don't want to come to this. I want to keep on time. I think I'm doing well, but let's proceed. The matter is that for creating accurate inner models, predictive models of the world, cognition requires also to accomplish a number of different other things. The first one is that We will do much better when cognition is embodied. I thank here Rebecca and Laura and Lauro for providing me the photos I was going to use later, because some of the photos were taken a couple of years ago in a seminar you invited me in Braga. In the seminar, I did a small performance to try to, first of all, signify what embodied cognition is. What I did as an example is to tie the knot of a tie with my eyes closed, just to show how by thinking by gestures sometimes becomes informative enough to perform a proper action, even if some others of our sense, first of all the sight, is not in operation. And this is only because the gestures we use to tie a knot are already embodied in ourselves, and we can repeat almost by memory. This day, I remember I told the people in the audience something that is why, for me, was very relevant. For a number of reasons, I never learned to tie the knot of my tie till I was, I think, 47 or 48 years old. But once I had to do, because I was invited to a very, very, very formal reception, and I was not at home, I was out of home, so I had to procure to get a tie, and I had to do the knot, and I didn't know. Sorry, I thought that I didn't know, because just because the need, I decided, well, Felipe, you have seen so many times people, including my father, but not only, tying their tie knots that you should know. And then I left my hands alone to go. And I did. The only real problem that was even much more important to speak about, to understand what is embodied cognition that is embodied in the body, is embodied in the gesture, is embodied in our hands, in our feet. The only real problem was that I did pretty well the knot, but in a reverse way. And this was pretty informative. Why? Because always I was looking at some other people doing the knot, not myself. So when I start to realize, I start to resume the gestures I had seen, what I did was exactly the gestures on the reverse way. So it was funny because it took me that day perhaps no more than 5 minutes to learn by myself how to do the knot. But it took me more than 30 minutes to try to do the knot, to deconstruct my knowledge, to reverse my experience knowledge, and to produce a proper, efficient knowledge to do well the knot. Well, this is a funny but very good example of what embodied cognition means. For performing things, really our minds, our thoughts must become engaged with our bodies and with our way of being in the world. The second example I took that day for this, it was an example to exemplify, to show what enactive cognition is. And enactive cognition is actually a concept to remember that cognition doesn't depend only from just one sense. It involves a number of senses together, but also it involves all the full body in a sense. For that, what I did was something that looks to be a bit dangerous, but and there are people on the room that can say that nothing really bad happens. I save myself with my eyes closed and without a mirror. And you can do. You can do if you accept to cut the main sense, what is sight, that usually is guiding you, and you put attention to other things of your body, starting with hearing, but also the touch, the quality of the knife going by your skin. All this is informative and can guide your action. Again, it's a good example of how cognition is inactive. The second matter, the third. The third point is embedment. Cognition is always embedded. I brought here a couple of good examples of this. What is this? It's ambiguous, you could say. You will say, well, it's 13 number. But you could say, it's B letter. What that means? That it depends on the context. The context is exactly what actually reduces ambiguity in the world. So cognition must be embedded in order also to create accurate inner models that could predict what is going to happen. Still, let me put another example that is much more cognitive about the embedment of cognition. Look at this image. You saw perfectly. What do you see now? I haven't changed the image. I can demonstrate it. This is a visual effect created by some reasons in the way we process the visual information. The point is that, just introducing the red line, it could be any color, by the way. The two pieces that looks to be white and gray become gray. I can come later on to the presentation. I can demonstrate you that I haven't done any trick here. It's still another good example about how we need the context. We need to look further on to experience the world around to create accurate cognitive results. The final thing is extended cognition. The matter that cognition, it goes pretty beyond, of course, our brain, but even our mind, our body, and is already in the world, or at least in the sort of continuity that there exists between the body, the individual, the society, and the world. That day I took this poncho and I comment how the way of looking at this poncho is the same way of looking at the landscape that is behind me. I will come later on to this, so let's go ahead. With all these things together is how we can see instead of just looking. One thing is looking, but if we want to see, if we want really to realize what we look, we need together all the different things. Seeing is in a way very, very magic. I brought here some slides that I hope you will love, prepared by my colleague, my fellow colleague, Luis Martinez, that likes this very much. What is this? Well, it could be the letter phi in a Greek alphabet. But actually, it is not. But look really what it is. Realize, Luis is taking one trace, one line of the figure on the left and is moving it to the right. Okay? you start to see what is. I am almost sure that at that moment you are predicting that what this could be. If I put the last, you already see what is. Well, it's a drawing by Pablo Picasso. And Luis Descomposed, deconstructed it to do this visual demonstration. That is very good to demonstrate that for seeing, we have to think. We have to involve things that have to do with the context, with the others' feelings, and so on. Let's go back. So, actually what's happened, and you could see partially in the sample I put, what's happening is that the magic of seeing is explained by the existence of inner models. Because we have inner models, we can see properly, we can see in an accurate way. Seeing, sight is extremely complex sense. And now I will come to sight, and I will come to things about the study of the visuality and so on. Things could be studied through eye movements. Eye movements are something that our eyes are doing continuously. At least we are performing four movements by second. This is pretty amazing, and it would deserve a different explanation, but I'm not going to come to this now. But the most of you think that you are looking at me, that you are looking at the screen, or you are looking to your mobiles. But this is not true. While you are doing this, while you are looking at me, your eyes are moving all the time, doing different things. In a while, we'll see what they are doing. The matter here is that the retina is a super digital camera. Our retina has got a resolution of 105 megapixels. What is amazing, it has been estimated that that means that every second our brain receive or would receive 70 gigabytes of information. One time I estimate that. It was a few years ago, perhaps 4 or 5 years ago. The funny thing was that at that point I estimated that the amount of visual information one single individual, one single brain receives in a year occupies much more than the highest, biggest supercomputer at that moment. It was 5 years ago. Today I know that perhaps we will have already I haven't checked, I haven't tested again, haven't tested back this idea. It would be funny, or would be nice to do. I can imagine that, yeah, okay, today we will have supercomputers that will be able to store perhaps the amount of visual information that 10 persons receive in a year. That is amazing. And the problem is that we cannot process all this information. Luis has estimated that if we have to process this, all this information, just the visual part of the brain, the part of the brain that is devoted to visuality, should be so big as this. Can you imagine to go around with a car in part of your head? Even more important, and these are good news for sweet people, if you have to process all this information, you will need to eat 1.5 tons of sugar a day. Good news for sweet people. However, I don't know if it is so good, anyhow. Because of that, the visual information must be processed through what, properly speaking, is a functional bottleneck in our brain. The system, the visual system of the persons, of the humans, works like a digital camera. A digital camera, it doesn't matter if you have a 40 gigapixels resolution camera, the camera is going to have to capture the image and to comprehend the image, and will make an image of a size that could be manipulated. For doing that, the camera uses an algorithm. And the matter is that when then you come to your computer, your program that knows the algorithm that has been used to comprehend the image could decomprehend the image to get a full image again. Well, the brain looks, the visual brain looks like that. We capture a 1 gigapixels image, we transfer to our brain at the size of 1 mega, what is a reduction that makes things affordable, but then the algorithm, the inner model in our mind, because it's not only our brain, it's everything that is connected with cognition, create an image that is even much more accurate, much more resoluted than the original one. I wanted to say, well, this operation is done because our mind has got already the inner models to deconstruct, to decomprehend, and reconstruct again, and recomprehend again the image. So well, let me put another example that is from an extremely important paper by Luis Martinez some few years ago. Look at this. It's handwriting. On blue, you have a handwriting. Okay. In purple, you have how this handwriting is transferred to our brain, comprehending the image. And the green is the comprehension of the image that our inner models do in our visual brain. Actually, you can read, you can understand, just because you have inner models, because otherwise you could not be able to read the purple writing. This is again a good example. Well, this is the same. Let me come to this. So, imagine you are in New York and you have this, and you look around and see this urban setting. This is actually what you are seeing in your brain. But what the image that you are capturing and transferring to your visual brain is like this. It just keeps high resolution of these points that call your attention, while all the others are transferred with much more basic information because they are accidental for what is important. However, the brain has to reconstruct that. By the way, this also call us humanists or sociologists to make some change in our way of studying or talking about these things. Because most of the time we all are very much accustomed to call about perception. But perception is just the action of getting a stimulus from the world. Perception should never be used to speak about the image we reconstruct, because the image we got is not what we perceive, it's what we reconstruct. So for this reason, if we want to be really right, it's much better to speak about not visual perception, but visual cognition. Perception is, I repeat, perception is our way to catch the stimulus. But the image we reconstruct with this stimulus depends on an extremely strong and difficult cognitive processing. What means that for seeing, we have to think. I will put you now a couple of good examples of this. What are at the same time a good example of how you only can see if you have the inner model. Look at this. I am going to ask if you recognize this person. Please, raise your hands immediately if you recognize this person. Yes, yes, but you are going to anticipate it. So, by the way, the problem is that your hands is going to be slower than your mind. I go now. You don't recognize him? Yes. Well, this is Charles Chaplin. The image is not altered. Well, it's altered, but it's distortion in a very specific way. It's distortion in the way that the image of this portrait of Charles Chaplin is taken to your brain. How it is comprehended. But you can see Charles Chaplin perfectly because your visual brain is doing exactly what image software is doing in the computer, is extrapolating after the inner model we have of Charles Chaplin. This is a very good example too. It's even better than the previous one, because here you don't recognize something. If I ask you, what is this, what you are seeing, you will say, well, shadows, darks, a map, an abstract painting. Do you see something here? Any of you see really something here? You have not, because you have no prediction, in an inner model you cannot anticipate what is there. I'll show you now. But even more important, what are you seeing now? You have already the inner model. Yeah, our brain is so flexible that we produce at least simple inner models quickly. This is the reason because we could be so much affected, so much influenced by certain stimulus, by the way. I am sure that if I come back next year here and I put to you again this example, you will remember and you will still see the cow in there. Without it, the model happens like this. It will take you a while to realize what is represented here. It's a map. Our inner models are maps, but are maps that are familiar for us. This is a world map, but is represented on a projection that it will take you a long while to recognize that this is a mappa mundi, a world map. And perhaps even some of you, or some people, will never find. Well, Luis likes a lot this video, what is an extremely good example of what happens if you haven't got an inner model. Look at the chap. Still, last bit to talk about. Sorry, I think I'm going to take 5 extra minutes. It's 20 to 11. It's okay. Look at that. I left in Spanish, not in English or Portuguese, for one simple reason. Those of you who know Spanish, I know that you are able to read the text in white, in black, but not so sure that at least for those who don't speak Spanish fluently, it will be much more difficult to read. And the reason, because it could be read, is this is the eye tracking of our writing. You can see that the eyes are not following every single lines. They are not focusing in every single letter. They are just getting part of the things. And the others are completed again with your inner model. Well, all this is just to say that studying visual cognition is, of course, very much important. This is the reason, because it's a prominent topic of research for cognitive science and neuroscience. But what these science have forgotten most of the time is that actually what they are dealing with is something that means that visual cognition is affected by the materiality and by the materiality we produce. So by using different techniques of eye tracking, by getting examples as this is the eye tracking of a subject, of a person looking at prehistoric pottery, we can reconstruct how people look at different sorts of pottery styles in prehistory. I am archaeologist, so I put archaeological examples, but that could be also examples of the history of art. However, still there is a good reason to go to archaeology, at least two good reasons. First one is that the data are much more simplified because they are scales. The second one is that archaeology introduces a totally, completely otherness, a totally completed experience of the difference. By doing this sort of analysis, we have already checked that different sort of pottery styles have produced different patterns of visual behavior. Generally speaking, this visual behavior could be, for instance, but not only, characterized looking at the relation between horizontal and vertical movements the eye do. Important was to realize that in this style that belongs to Neolithic, the visual behavior mainly involved horizontal movements. After Bell-Vicker, after a funny and very interesting pottery that appears about year 2500 BC, the visual behavior started to be much more horizontal. The interesting matter is that that behavior doesn't depend on the age, on the gender, even not in the level of expertise of the experimental subjects. What means that it's something consistent, and what means that at the end, the index of verticality in the visual behavior increased through time, and increasing a way that actually goes hand by hand, goes beside the increasing of social ranking, of social complexity. In these cases, and it happens in other cases too, so much ranked is a society, is pottery, I would say, I would guess that also other material expressions, but particularly is pottery, is connected to a visual behavior that is more or less horizontal or vertical. But as I said, that could be the case too if you analyze other sort of materiality, not just pot. Well, these are the visual behavior in the different stage of the building of Silbury Hill, that is a prominent megalithic site in southern England, but you will find this better. If you take these examples of the historical architecture from Neolithic times to the cathedral, and you look to a medieval, well, in that case, Santiago Cathedral, but to a medieval or modern cathedral, the relationship between horizontal and vertical movements goes like this, increasing all the time around. Actually, it's a bit more complex. For instance, it's extremely nice, but I am not going to comment because I have no time, to see that the visual response to Parthenon is lower. The vertical visual response to the Parthenon is lower than to an Iron Age Galician or Northern Portugal hill fort. And it's interesting. This has to do a bit with democracy, but this is a different topic. So, I am just approaching the... So, through visual action, it is through visual action how the material worlds affect our inner models, and then creates a loop, a link that actually is a loop between the two things, between the external world and the inner models. This is what you find when you landscape monuments and you realize, for instance, through visual relations, how they interact each other. Monuments start building a landscape, and they created a complex landscape. So in a sense, the inner model we use to produce the monument is also putting this monument as a dot to create a complex landscape. But the interesting thing that I'm trying to do is that we can look at this, looking at other different sorts of materialities that you will never say that they are landscapes, but through visual behavior, we, for instance, realize that they are seen in the same way that it's seen the architecture of the landscape, and perhaps other things that we cannot study as dressing, jewelry, and many other things, it's the same. Listen, this was, and this is a fly over the landscape of a Neolithic pot. The previous was also a Neolithic pot. The movement you have to do with the camera to describe the difference in decoration of this pot are at the end the same that you have to do when looking at this landscape full of monuments and with monuments around. And this change, look at this, to comprehend all these monuments. Here the monuments, the Neolithic mounds, are signed with white blankets because you haven't got an inner model of this landscape. So we have to use a proxy to try to make the inner model appearance for you. Well, as I said before, this changed completely with Bell Beaker, or it changed with Iron Age pottery. Now the inner model, you will see. Now the fly you have to do to understand this pottery, at the end is the same fly, the same visual movement you have to do to move around a castro, to move around a hill fort, and to understand the castro. Just look at this. I will finish in a very short while. You come as a castro like this, and even to access, you have to move up. But also to see, to understand, you have to move up, or you have to move down in certain circumstances. Otherwise, you cannot find the gate, going through the gate, and so on. Let me, because we must do quickly. The matter is that then, with all these things, the inner model creates a basic structure of landscape. And this would be, I'm not going to come on this, the structure of megalithic space I have proposed for not only Galician megalithics, but it could be extended to part of Portugal, part of the Atlantic facade. The matter is that through materializations, it is this structure what is being constructed. The interesting thing is that this structure appears in ceremonial enclosures, in the layout of the monuments, in the layout or the design of the megalithic chambers, or even in megalithic chambers that are created with a much more minimal expression. So, putting together all these things that I am talking about, what we are doing is landscaping the mind, transferring the mind to the landscape. Let me quickly come back to the sample I put before. In the previous slide, I was wearing a poncho, what is a modern, a present-day indigenous version of the old ponchos, pre-Spanish, pre-contest ponchos of this area. amazing thing here is that the way you can realize the poncho implies to do the same sort of visual movements you have to do to understand this landscape around. And even more important, is the same movement you have to do to look at the pottery that comes in these landscapes with this poncho. This is a way to how the extended mind is actually become worlds, become materialized in the worlds. But this also brings us something more, that this inner model becomes so much strong that to change it, we need extremely good reason. And historically, perhaps we need overall coercive power. It is just with a coercion that you can change quickly the inner models. This was what happened with Inca people in this same area. Now I am presenting you an Inca poncho that comes that comes together with this pottery. In that case, we are looking at things that are not only much more complicated and then creating a much complex visual behavior, but they are creating overall a different visual behavior that in that case is must engage together horizontal but also vertical movements to realize the significant difference in the pot. So that's all. That is what the project, the Escape project, is about and what we are going to anticipate. I finished with this Twitter. I tweet this last January or February because what I am joking there is really important matter. The matter is that our inner models becomes together at the end with our ideology, with our social and power system, and so on. And particularly the way we understand reality, the way as we understand the social, with the way we understand the individual, or even cognition, it has been, even in our science, overall in our culture, very much shaped by the sort of society to which we belong, what is a capitalist bourgeois society. One way at the end also, to try to understand better what this culture means and to try also to deconstruct that is through doing research of this kind that engage together archaeology, anthropology, history, cognitive science, and neuroscience. As I said there, I have committed myself to this time don't fail. We will definitely deconstruct the capitalist bourgeois paradigm of identity of subject. And that's all. Thank you so much, people.